and welcome back to the Baseball Development Hub podcast. My name is Trevor Powers, and I am joined today by co-host Dan Galati. Dan, happy Memorial Day to all our listeners that are listening on this Monday or throughout the week. It's nice to have a short week as we finally get into the summer months, which is the thick of baseball. College baseball postseason has started this past weekend with the regionals starting this weekend. We are at the third quarter way through Major League Baseball season, which is when we start to have a lot more information about what these teams are. So super excited, but I'm even more excited to be looking across the way at you back on a podcast because it does get lonely sometimes in the streets.
Yes. Credit to you for being able to do this alone. I couldn't do it. It's impressive, very Josh Pate-esque of you to be able to. Because it's rare to hear a podcast with only one person. Everybody needs a sidekick. I enjoy being yours. Happy Memorial Day. Big weekend for all those out there who are going to go get themselves some free sandwiches tomorrow.
Yeah, we don't need to rehash the Veterans Day special story for our OG listeners. That is an absolute throwback from what's got to be about 2.5 years ago.
I think it's 4 years ago. I think it was 4 years. It was two places ago that I lived, so it was definitely 4 years ago, and just one of the all-time great stories for those who don't understand that it's a big day to get a free sandwich, free coffee. We hand them out. It's a big day. Have that, dust off that military ID and get out there and get yourself some free grub. You deserve it. It's the least we can do for you here in this country if you've served to protect us. So thank you to those who have made the ultimate sacrifice.
Yes. Our reward back to people who have made the ultimate sacrifices that independent, privately owned businesses have to fund sandwiches for people.
The barbecue, that pulled pork sandwich. This is all we can spare. Here's a pulled pork sandwich and a free small coffee from your local Dunkin'. And enjoy. Here's a hey. Oh, you did 3 tours? Well, here's a sizzly. Good morning. Enjoy this breakfast.
We will
we can
open
muster.
Up the mailbag. Yeah, we'll open up the mailbag, and if somebody really, really wants the Veterans Day special conversation, we can rehash the whole story at some point. But Dan, today I wanted to hop on. Like I said, we're about a third of the way through Major League Baseball season, and
crazy.
Which is crazy how fast it's gotten here, and the fact that college baseball postseason is here. And actually, it's a good crossroads to be at in the baseball community because one of the things that has come across my television each and every day when I'm following Major League Baseball and you're listening to pundits speak about the sport is the lineup construction and how fun, entertaining, and perfect the Rays and Brewers are, and how it's a shock that teams without the power can be amongst the league leaders in runs scored. And the reason I think now is a really good crossroads to have this conversation is because with college baseball postseason here, we're starting to talk about playoff baseball. And the conversation I want to have with you is the difference between what it takes to win 162, the difference between dynamic lineups, right? And why the 3-run bomb does pay huge dividends in postseason baseball. So I know it's a very overarching question, but I know you follow Major League Baseball as much as I do. And it's something that I don't want to say it's nauseating, but it feels like every pundit is talking about how entertaining the Rays and Brewers are at this time. And just want to hear your perspective on that.
If we had the time and we really wanted to pie in the face people, we should really go back and try and find anything that was said nationally about the Nationals, Brewers, Rays in spring training, thinking about their offenses in spring training. Because no one, especially like the Brewers, there's a couple organizations in the league. It's funny, I got a text last night from a friend who was like, how are the Guardians good? And I was like, they just are. They're always good. They're always going to have a good record. And the Brewers, I feel like the same thing. The Brewers will never surprise me. And I think a lot of people kind of feel the same way about them. They're just well run. And they're always going to be good. They find a way, and the Guardians find a way. But when you look at the Nationals and the Rays specifically, especially in the divisions they played in, you talk about the American League East and the National League East, and I think the Nationals and the Rays were two of the least talked about teams in those divisions because you have the Yankees, you have the Red Sox, you have the Blue Jays who were in a World Series last year, you have the Phillies, the Mets, the Braves. And so in spring training, no one was talking about them, but now they're good. So it's like everybody wants to be them and emulate them. And it's so funny how that happens. And I would just like, I guess where I want to start this is like, and I said this to you before we started recording, like, yeah, the Rays it's awesome. Like Chandler Simpson is great. And the way they do things, and Yandy Diaz has always been just like a exit velo king. But even he, as he's gotten older, like he's just like so much better at controlling the strike zone. He knows what pitches he can do damage with. He does loosen up a little bit and slugs more. But they also employ Junior Caminero, like who you talked about last week, and you talked in the video that's out on our socials is awesome. But like it's like Junior Caminero does have 40 homer power, so it's not like they're doing this with a bunch of guys who just. I think the thing that people get confused is a lot of these people like just like in their head like think it's like 9 Tony Gwynns, and that's probably not fair to Tony Gwynn, but it's like 9 guys who are just gonna like slap the ball the other way, take their base hit. And it's like it's not true. Like the part of the reason that what makes the Nationals offense so much better this year, one is batted ball luck, which they've had a lot of it, and that is I'm starting to think like I'm kind of getting tired of the batted ball luck thing. There is skill involved, but like it's used as a crutch so often, especially for pitchers. But like it matters. Like they have the skill to put the ball in play hard and with barrel control and things like that, and that's important. But they also have CJ Abrams, who's taken a leap slugging this year. And they have James Wood, 40 homer power guy, like the potential to hit 40 plus homers in James Wood. So like I think what we're looking for here is we've swung the pendulum so far from like just homer happy, which is good because that works in some cases, but like it's a dynamic offense. That's the answer people are looking for. Is you need to have a balanced lineup, a lineup that can do multiple things. Because when you play 162 games, and when you get into the postseason and kind of like the bounce of the ball does matter a little bit in the postseason, you need to be able to do multiple things on multiple nights. You need to be able to slug your way to wins. You need to be able to when you're facing a guy who's not going to give up the homer and you can't slug your way to wins, you need to be able to string hits along. When you guys, and this is probably the point you're going to make, so I'll end it here. You know, the guys who slug, they're streaky. So you need other guys in that lineup when it's a cold streak and we're not hitting the homers to be able to do other things to generate runs. Because at the end of the day, you have to score runs. Like that's the name of the game. To boil it down to one thing, it's like you have to score to win.
I have very strong opinions on winning baseball games in the postseason. But I think with both these orgs and even the Nationals, even though their pitching isn't exactly caught up yet, is they understand that you can't get to the postseason if you don't win in 162, right? And there's the stat that I've heard on MLB Network a couple times. The Rays got rid of every hitter in their lineup with above a 25% K percentage. And I do think to a large extent, like it was egregious enough that it was intentional and it felt intentional, that there is a large extent that winning in 162 is the step one, right? And I think what the Brewers and Rays have done with their lineup construction is understanding how to raise the floor to the extent to give them a chance in October and potentially hope that they can get hot stretches out of their superstars, right? Which is what they're going to need to win a World Series. Hot stretches out of their superstars and rely on their pitching to be able to win a World Series. And I think that the way that you described these lineups with mentioning the elite players that they have in the middle of it is a very important nuance that seems to get missed. Junior Caminero is not laying down bunt for base hits in the late innings. You know, James Wood is trying to go bridge every time he makes contact with a baseball. CJ Abrams has taken a huge step forward. Bryce Turang has taken a huge step forward. And that's what makes these lineups truly, truly threatening to the opposition. And I think where both of these organizations have found a quote unquote market inefficiency is the safety net of the other 7 hitters in their lineup. Is I would love to be able to have a guy at the bottom of my order who can manipulate the baseball and catch a third baseman sleeping on his heels because the guy's thinking of his next at bat, and bang, he's on first base. Chandler Simpson gets on first base and the whole crowd perks up and the whole opposition perks up. And that puts a different kind of anxiety on the defense than even a 3-run bomb threat, powerful hitter, 3 true outcome hitter does. And I think that's what you're starting to see with these lineups that I think gets missed in this conversation is these aren't their superstars that are those types of players. The Rays didn't go add Luis Arias this offseason, who was available, and stick him in the 3 hole and say, we need you to be our best hitter. What they did is they rounded out their roster with 7, 8, 9 hitters who provide value in a different way and put a different kind of anxiety on the opposition to create pressure and hope that that pressure breaks the opposition enough to set Junior Caminero, to set James Wood, to set Bryce Turang up with runners on base to make a larger impact in those moments. And I think that what they're trying to do is look at how to win in 162. And that's the market inefficiency that they've identified. And I think it's genius. I think it is genius. I think it leaves a little bit to be desired in October, but we don't have to worry about October if we aren't getting 90 wins.
Exactly. And I think that's the kind of give and take that a lot of organizations have to make, because it is unique that over the course of 162, it's a different game. And I know we've talked about this on here where it's like there's different ways to win during the regular season and when you get into October. And when you're playing a tournament style where anyone can win and who's hot at that time and who's healthy at that time. And we're not even talking about the pitching side of things, which factors so much in, because if you get a couple hot arms on the mound, like that can carry you because now you have to score less. And you just want the opportunity every year, right? Like you can't, there's one organization in baseball that I think can feel like just play for October every year, meaning they're on cruise control. And that's the Dodgers. And you watch how they operate and you watch how like they're so interesting because they're playing, like you watch them throughout the course of the year and they're playing like a different type of game than everyone else during the regular season. And some of this is obviously perception and my perception, which is my opinion and only mine and maybe not the truth, but somewhere I think within this lies the truth of the fact that like I watch the Dodgers and I'm like, they're in month 3 of spring training right now. They are like, and you even see how they manage their IL and manage the roster, and like everything they do is like they're not pedal to the metal and pressing to win, and like they know that they have the roster that can win in October, because if they can keep their guys healthy, Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Teoscar, Pajes, like Will Smith, like when they get to October, they have the lineup that can hit homers, they can be dynamic, they can put pressure on you, and then like, oh yeah, on the pitching side of things, if they can just keep their arms healthy, their starting pitchers healthy, and then they can roll that. Like last year, it's like, oh, well, the Dodgers going into the postseason is like their starting pitching wasn't great this year. And it's like, yeah, but when were they all healthy? They're going into the postseason and now they're all healthy. And now it's like, okay, you get Yamamoto, you get Ohtani, you get Glass now. It's like they're going to be a problem. Snell, like, and they run the table. So outside of them, like you have to play for 162. You should build for 162 to get the chance in October, and then you hope against hope. And the Phillies are a great case of this. Like the Phillies, the way they've been built the last several years, and it's not working this year, but the last several years, it's like they've had great starting pitching and they've had a bunch of slug in their lineup with Schwarber and Harper and guys like that. And they've tried to homer their way to October. So like they're playing to get to October, and then they're going to take their chance and hope that a couple of those guys are hot in October and they can ride their starting pitching to a World Series championship. That's kind of the give and take you have to make during the regular season. It's like, okay, we're going to build for 162. We're going to play to get in and then hope that we can be hot enough, because it's so funny to me because like you face a bunch of 4 and 5s during the regular season. Depending on how your series match up, you're going to face a bunch of lower quality teams that don't have the pitching depth. When you get to the postseason, every arm you face, it's going to be really good. It's going to be really good. So how are you going to score runs when you get there? It's going to be a lot harder than it does in 162 because, hey, it's May 24th and I can go out there and we're facing a 5 today and we can have a 6-run inning and we can string hits together and we're going to get some free passes. And then one of those big guys that we're talking about, James Woods, CJ Abrams, Junior Caminero, Bryce Turang, any of these guys that you look at that hit in the middle of these orders can go up and pop one, and you just stacked another win. You stacked another series win, and you do that through the course of 162 to get the chance to play in October and maybe get hot and go on a run.
Yeah, and it's fascinating that you say all that, because I couldn't agree more. And I heard this stat the other day: offense peaks in August.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Everybody wants to say it's the weather. It is the weather. It's the depth of pitching.
Pitching.
The weather matters, but the depth of pitching that really crops up in the dog days of August, we've heard it our whole life in terms of the baseball season, the dog days of August catch up to the pitching staff where every reliever, every pitch they throw, they're a depreciating item across the season, right? Starters can get in rhythms, routines, stretches, they get better. Relievers, every pitch they throw is lacking of quality than the pitch before, right? Or the outing before, because that's how they are built, is to be an engine that runs at 100 miles per hour. And each and every time they step out there, the more innings they accumulate, the worse off they become. So that starts to creep up in August, September, and even October. Starting pitching is different. Ace level starting pitching is completely different. And your point is exactly valid. It's like winning in 162 is taking advantage of the depth in August, is going on a 15-7 month, is doing those things and getting momentum into October and hoping for the best. Like, that's the thing that, as a former Nationals person who followed each and every year, Mike Rizzo always say that used to drive fans up a wall. He said, hey, my goal as a general manager is to make a team that wins 90 games. 90 games. And then I hope the bounce of ball helps us win a World Series. And you look at it, the 2019 team wasn't that much better than the 2017 team. The 2015 team was really good. All of those things you would say, like losing Bryce Harper and replacing him with the Patrick Corbin is not exactly a one-for-one trade, let's just say, in terms of value. Bounce of ball went their favor in 2019. It didn't in 2018, 2017, and the years before. And I say all that to say that, like, there really is no lineup construction that guarantees wins in October. And I know that's controversial because each and every year we get to the end of the season and we look at the Blue Jays or the Royals in 2015, 2016, when it was on the backs of bullpen, and say, you need this, right? You need this or this to win a World Series. And really, that is just a selection bias based on who made it to the World Series or who was the hot ticket item come October. And I think that that's what the Rays and Brewers have identified. Is like, so many people want to talk about these lineups and how it's going to work in October, and they're completely missing the boat that I don't even think these organizations are thinking about how this lineup is going to perform in October as it stands right now, because I guarantee they go into the deadline and both of them sit there and say, okay, well, maybe the Rays look and say, hey, maybe we could afford some swing and miss in our game, right? Like to add into the lineup, which is the next point I want to make, is discussing some of these lineup dynamics that people aren't talking about outside of the superstars. But you look like you kind of had something to say there, so I don't want to go into another diatribe here while you have something on the tip of your tongue.
Well, I just go back on the August point. How many rotations, and we're talking offense here, but how many starting rotations in the league are able to withstand an injury or two? Like none. As soon as you get into starting pitchers 6 and 7, and that's what you get a lot in August, right? So it makes so much sense that offense is peaking, because you add that into what you were saying about bullpens, where guys are wearing down. You're talking about piling innings where they are depreciating assets for the most part. Like, every team at the deadline, right, needs a reliever. There's a reason. But I also think, like you said, it's because the way we consume sports is always about playoffs and championships, and that's all that matters. And it's one team standing, or even if you look at two teams standing, who made it to the championship. Every sport we watch, like, it's not about the regular season for sports viewers and fans, and even media to a certain extent. Like you said, everything's viewed through the prism of October, even though we're sitting here in May, instead of looking at, well, who's good through 162. How can you take a look at 162? And then it's a flip of a coin. Again, outside of like the Dodgers, because really no other organization does it. And we've talked a million times about what makes them so special, but like, everyone else just has to play for the coin flip. And you have to hope that way. So how do you build it? And that's where you get into the fact that, like, okay, you need guys who can make hard contact, consistent contact, and who doesn't ride the roller coaster. You need a majority of guys. You need 4, 5, 6 guys. You can have those 2, 3 special guys, and those guys don't grow on trees. That's the other thing, is we went through this wave of guys who can make a living being 3 true outcome guys. And, like, you know, I'm trying to think of a good example of who I'm thinking of, because, like, you know, I don't want to use the example of someone who's truly special. Like, you talk about Kyle Schwarber. Well, like, that's 60 homer power. Murakami, or how about this one? Here's an even better one, and only because I saw an article on The Athletic about him last week. But like Wilmer Flores, who like people are gonna be like, why are you bringing up Wilmer Flores? Well, Will Flores is a guy who like 3-homer game last year, could hit the ball out of the ballpark, but like he's now playing overseas because like those guys who like, if you're an organization like the Rays that don't play in the Murakami spending range or the Schwarber spending range, you can't spend that money. You have to find guys that can maybe leave the ballpark for you. Like 4 or 5 years ago, you were looking for those guys. Who's a 3 true outcome guy because homers are king and slug is king, but I can get for, $6 million. Wilmer Flores. Well, now you're not going to employ him anymore because Wilmer Flores isn't going to hit 45 homers. He's going to hit maybe 20 on a good year. And he's not going to get on base at the rate you need him to get on base. And he's not going to make contact at the rate you need him to get contact to. So a guy like that doesn't have a room for a small market team that's trying to compete for 162 and get a chance at the postseason anymore.
And it's no different than same thing in college athletics. When you talk about building your roster, is those small market teams can't miss as frequently as the bigger market teams, right? Or a White Sox who's not in contention, and it's worked out perfectly because Murakami was a risk because of the swing and miss, and everybody overinflated his chase. His chase has been unbelievable, and he is a reliable 3 true outcome guy because of that ability to control the strike zone. But the reality is that they were able to take that risk on a 2-year deal because it was like, well, we might not even be in contention. And if he's great for us. That's awesome. He's fantastic piece to our lineup. But if he stinks and flames out, like some guys in that scenario that you're outlining, the 3 true outcomes that aren't unicorn level 3 true outcomes, those guys just don't have roster spots because, again, everything is an investment. This is, again, like, I'm not saying that I'm pulling back the curtain on Major League Baseball, but we've talked and connected with enough people that understand the inner workings of how these decisions are made. Everything you do as a major league organization is not to directly win baseball games. Everything to them is an investment. And every asset that they invest in brings back an ROI, a return. And so that's how they view these things, is like, as the Rays, your money is worth more in the market because you can't afford to spend $25 million, because if you lose it, you've just now handcuffed your whole organization for every decision in the future. So guess what they're able to do? Hey, Cedric Mullins, who's hitting like $173 right now. So like, it's a bad contract, but hey, guess what? Come down here and play center field every day for $6 million. And come down here and we know what we're going to get out of you in terms of your leadership. You're a veteran. We kind of understand what you provide in terms of a player perspective, all of those things, right? And they rely on having Junior Caminero be special, right? They rely on, people don't give Yandy Diaz enough credit because he's an elite baseball player in my mind. Like, there's no questions. And we could say I'm new school as new school can be, but Yandy Diaz is a treat because he's a quality at bat. He could break my neck with his biceps. He just hits rockets into the right center gap. He's now, and again, for 35 years old, it's not like he's been in the league for a while, but he now knows when to put the gas pedal down and go 2-0 bridge to the pull side. And then it's like 2 strike. Like, that's the well-rounded hitter that people don't talk about. It's like, those guys are unbelievably dynamic and can compete against any high-level pitcher that's thrown against the Rays postseason, regular season, or not. But when we're talking about rounding out our roster, we have to look at the ROI of guys. And Wilmer Flores is more negative than positive. Does he have some positive moments? Yes, potentially. But you can't take that risk as a smaller market organization, right? And that's where these decisions are rooted in, is not directly them going, hey, we think that this is what is going to win every baseball game. We think that this is going to keep us competitive for long enough to allow us to make the decisions at the trade deadline to make us dynamic enough to potentially get to October, and then dynamic enough in October to beat high-level pitching, right? It is a 3-step evaluation of your rosters. Your roster comes out of spring a certain way. You have the trade deadline to make improvements, and then you hope that October turns a certain way. And when you talk about guys that can impact other teams in a dynamic way, in multiple different ways, with speed and, putting the ball on the ground and making teams make plays. And again, market inefficiency here that I will praise both these orgs for. The bump for a base hit is back, and it's beautiful because they have guys that can absolutely boogie and control the bat. And it's a lost art. And I will go old school on that. It's a lost art, and it's an opportunity because that counts as much as a rocket at the center fielder, right? 280 with everything being a bunt for a base hit, and 280 with everything being a line drive over the second baseman's head all count the same. It's about getting to first base, and they found a way to get guys to first base more than maybe they had in the past. And again, it's just a safe investment. The Rays and Brewers right now are utilizing index funds, right? They are going in and they're not investing in Apple, Google, these high variance stocks that might plummet off the face there. They're going in and they're finding safe investments to build their roster around, and then just trusting that they're going to have the tools necessary to maybe make some moves to make them more dynamic in the future.
I also think like everyone wanted to react to like the Blue Jays and thinks that's why teams are kind of chasing this, but I also think that the rules of the game have impacted this as well, because you now have more of an avenue for it with pitch clock, pickoff, ABS. It's now easier to create offense this way, because we went through a stretch of time when there was no pitch clock, when there was no pickoff limit, when there was no ABS. Like it was harder to walk, right? The
batter minimums either.
That too, but like yeah, because you could pick your matchups easier for as far as how you use your bullpen, but like. Because ABS, we know now through 2 months, has shrunk the zone. Walks are at an all-time high. You can get on first base a little bit more that way. You don't need to have the right, like you don't need to slug. Like we had completely shut down the running game when we could hold for 20 seconds and then pick 9 times and hold for 20 seconds and pick and then hold for 2 and then quick pitch. And it's like, well, now the rules are in place where running's a lot easier. So now when you get on first after your bump base hit, it's a lot easier to steal second base. So now you just hit a double.
Yep.
And so teams are taking advantage of that and teams are building that. And I think, there was a lot of scrutiny about a lot of these rule changes. I think it's awesome because I think what's happening is like the game is going to continue to get more athletic. And if you can control, you don't have to be, we're going to have less of the guys that are the 3 true outcome and the super slug guys and the 40 homer potential. And those guys will always have room. The guys who are unicorns, like you said, there'll always be roster spots and always get paid big bucks. But like the guys that fill out the edges of the roster, that fill out the rest of the lineup, are going to be guys who can control the strike zone, who understand the strike zone. And I think it's interesting. I've heard it put this way. Who said it? Whatever, we were talking about it, but you take your strike zone with you. I think it was Doug Glanville. You're not carrying your strike. Instead of the strike zone changing every night based on the home plate umpire, it's your strike zone. No matter who you're playing, what stadium, who's behind the dish, who's calling it, it's your strike zone. So if you have a great understanding of what your strike zone is, and you're an athletic guy, and you have good bat to ball, your value has gone up. So I think the rule changes also. Teams, the teams like Rays were always smart and looking for margins because they don't have the big checkbook. And like you made a great point there, is like their failed investment hurts 10 times more than the Phillies paying Taijuan Walker and Nick Castellanos to not play for them this year. The Rays can't do that. So they have to be able to win. And so those teams that are on the forefront of that, they're the ones who like they can see like, oh, the rule changes have now opened up this avenue where we can create more runs. We can create more return on our investment because the rules have now changed of the game that allow us to do these things. And I'm with you on the thing you said about bump base hits. Like, not only is it a way to steal hits when you're actually bunting, but it also changes now how you're defensed, which now opens up more things. So now you're creating a higher level of variance for your batted balls in play when you're not bunting because they have to guard it against it. You've just opened up more angles and opportunities on the infield to get more hits that way, and you don't have to hit a rocket through a hole because now the defense is coming in, they're shifting, they have to move how they play, they can't overshift you one way or the other. It just creates a whole like level of opportunity that now you can be more of a ground ball guy and be valuable.
Well, I was even going to say that the elimination of the shift allows a guy like Chandler Simpson to hit the ball on the ground and have more area for it to scoot through the infield. Or, for Chandler Simpson, as long as he moves a defender up the middle, he's probably got a shot to be safe, right? Like, and that's created a value of open grass across the field that they can't take away for guys now to open up the ground ball. I will say,
can I just jump in real quick? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Because just to add to this point too, which I think we should mention, is like So we eliminated the shift, so now ground balls are more open on the infield. At the same time, we've gotten so much better at defensive positioning in the outfield and shifting, because there's no rules on shifting. We play 3 guys in right field if we wanted to, that now balls in the air are less likely sometimes to come for hits or go for hits
Yes.
and find grass,
Mm-hmm.
because we've gotten so good at defensive positioning in the outfield and shifting that way and knowing exactly where you're going to hit the ball in the air. So now those two, like, you've just added a little bit and sprinkle a little more value in on the guys who can hit the ball on the ground and find holes.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, on the ground ball side of that, because you're completely accurate, right? Like, there's a lot of statistics coming out, and I've always had an opinion on for a couple years now on barrel percentage, not telling the whole story, and expected stats, just kind of tracking launch angle and exit velocity and calculating whether it should be a hit or not. And you'll see guys that underperform their expected stats because of their inability to pull the baseball. Juan Soto is a great example of, like, a guy whose expected stats will always be higher than his actual stats
Bonkers.
because he's a big
Yeah.
part. Yeah, he's a big part hitter, and he's strong enough to go big part, so it works for him. But there are guys who aren't the, beasts that are able to go big fly to center, who underperform their expected stats in a big way. Max Kepler was a huge underperform his expected stats for years, and there was a lot of people in the fantasy world that were like, this guy's going to break out. And it was like, we weren't quantifying the ability to pull the baseball in the air and how that impacts your batted ball profiles and your, let's just call it KPIs, your key performance indicators of, like, barrel percentage equal success. It doesn't always equal success, because 399 to center is a fly out. 399 down the line is a way
second deck
right
homer.
and that's impacted outfield positioning, where, let's just say, a guy is big part focused and he has no ability to pull the ball down the line, and you can pinch your corner outfielders more to center field and take away the gaps, and next thing you know, a barrel line drive because right fielder's in the right spot, right? And those things, and on the ground it's opened up because, like you said, you're limited in your movements, and it's still watching, right? This is more vibes and gut feel than it is backed by data. Watching, there is still a large component on the ground of how hard you hit it. I still
Sure.
think soft ground balls, and based on positioning, with the guys being able to snug right behind second base and that still being legal, I still see a lot of ground balls that don't get through. But who's been one of the biggest benefactors of the elimination of the shift over the last 2 years? Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber has seen more singles in back-to-back years than he ever saw the years leading up, because guess what he does? He hits the ball extremely hard on the ground, which is still the value you're looking for. And maybe some of these guys that are more dynamic with their legs, but you brought up a good point. If we have to bring corners up for nobody on, nobody out, and we can't go big infield like we're able to do with our sluggers because they're slow and they're pulling a chariot behind them, creates another dynamic where now the 75-mile-per-hour ground ball scoots by the third baseman into left. Chandler Simpson's on first base. He's on second base in 1 to 2 pitches. Guess what? He hit a double. And that's one of the research points. If I ever get time, or you get time, I think we should put together a social media post on this, is stolen base adjusted OPS, right? I would love
Yeah.
to look at what the Rays and Brewers are doing and how maybe that creates a better conversation about the actual impact of, like, if we can say a single and a steal is worth a double, okay, well, let's quantify a single and a steal for both these teams and see what they actually stack up in comparison to some of these teams that maybe rely a lot more on slug. And what's the interesting part? I mean, the ground game has become such a good part of baseball as a whole. The Yankees are running. Look at what they're able to do with Caballero being their everyday shortstop who can steal 60 bags. Jazz likes to run, right? Like, those guys, even these, like, slugging lineups, really have prioritized the ground game and putting pressure in that way because of the rules that have been put in place. And it's exciting. And again, it's one of those things where it's about, it just goes back to this overarching conversation we're trying to have here, is it's about a dynamic offense that can kill you in multiple different ways. If you're slow to the plate, which a lot of pitchers struggle to control the run game because
Because they didn't
they're
have
really
to.
focused on, they've never had to, right? They never had to learn. Most of them never, a lot of them probably never played college baseball, and where it's such a focal point of development is like, well, Caballero's on first base and he might have hit a bleeder at 65 miles per hour in October. Guess what? Bang, second base, sliding in. Now you're sweating because the top of the lineup with the big boys are on deck with Judge and Rice, and you're, right? Like, so again, like, we want to sit here and we want to glorify what the Rays and Brewers are doing. And I do think it is a market inefficiency that they have identified. And it's an awesome thought experiment and case study to continue to look at how they create runs. But every team has identified that stolen bases are valuable. Two guys, this will be the last thing. Two guys that are stealing bases more. Josh Naylor out in Seattle, first baseman, stealing base, and Freddie Freeman will just quietly swipe 10 to 15. You think that's not because teams are identifying this as the new frontier? Like they want slow guys running because they think they can. And if you can get yourself to second base, that's more valuable. And it goes back to our stolen base adjusted stats that we can keep track of very easily. It's not complex data and analytics that we're talking about. And I guarantee these teams like the Rays and Brewers would scoot up those boards and start to showcase a little bit more per base value than they're showing, at least in the traditional stat lines.
Yeah, when a guy like Josh Naylor's like now it opens up the door for be a good base runner. And then if you are a three true outcome guy, taking your walks, you can turn them into doubles. And now you're putting yourself in scoring position. And now, like, the advantage you get from that, and your point about postseason is like when you get a guy on second in the postseason, palms are sweating immediately, bullpen stern, because you can't have a big inning, things can't snowball on you, and that one run is the difference. And I also think it's exciting because I think the guys who you're just creating more value for yourself, and then like you look at the next crop of guys who could like what's the next superstar going to look like? Like, what's that next crop of guys who are going to be the household names look like? You think Bobby Witt, you think Connor Griffin, like, what do they do? Like, these guys are athletes. Like, we're getting more athletic in the sport. And, like, that can only make it more exciting. And guys who have the bat to ball, who can run, who can get on base. And I agree, like, to bring the way the ground game has gone and, like, all these rule changes, like, as critical as you can be of Major League Baseball rule changes, like, to me, the game is in such a fun spot because pitchers are better. You're running more, like you're getting the zone, the ball strike right more often now, and I think it's only a good thing, and being able to build a dynamic lineup is the way you have to go. You're gonna have to be athletic. Like the days of just having guys who go up there and like there's a lot of swing and miss in your lineup and power and like like everyone can go bridge in any moment. Like those aren't going to be the teams that are going to be as successful over 162 anymore. Like you have to go up there and you have to find better ways or more ways, I should say, to manufacture runs and be dynamic and be multiple and have 9 guys in your lineup that can all do something a little different. But you still need, like, all of that to say, like, you still have to be able to slug. And when you get to the postseason, like, the Jays were a great story, but they have Vladimir Guerrero. Like, prodigious power. They got beat because they gave up a home run in the 9th inning to tie it in Game 7. Like, that cost them the World Series. Like, so the home run is still going to, nothing affects the game like the long ball. I just think also with like how good pitching is you can't, and the ball isn't juiced anymore. Like you can't solely rely on the homer. And if you are relying on the homer and solely the homer, like I mean, again, like I look at the Phillies the last several years in the playoffs, and it's like when they go cold, they lose to an Arizona team. They lose to a Mets team, and that's a wild card game. They lose to the Dodgers because they couldn't manufacture one run in game 4 of the NLDS last year. And you look at the Yankees in their struggles in the postseason and what they had been in years past. And, a team that relies so much on the slugging over the course of 162, they're, tops in the league in slugging percentage and homers. And it's like, yeah, that's great, but get to October, you better find other ways to score.
Mm-hmm. You better be multiple in the way that you're scoring runs in terms of just being able to. Again, it goes back to the conversation that we're having that it's just simply finding a way to be as dynamic as possible. Just a quick stat: there's 4 teams, league leaders in stolen base, and all of them have been very good stories so far, at least offensively through the year. All of them except for one have a sub 700 OPS. We have the Marlins, the Guardians, the Brewers, and the Tampa Bay Rays all at the top. And then 5 and 6 were like, I mean, these lineups may just be like legit as the Nationals and the Yankees. The Yankees have 49 steals. They have a 754 OPS. They have about a 190, 192 isolated power. So they're able to slug and they're able to run the bases. And that's scary, right? Like that to me, and this will kind of segue us into October and talking about postseason baseball. And then the other one is the Washington Nationals, who have a 739 slug or 739 OPS with 51 bags and a pretty good, not as powerful as the Yankees are, but pretty darn good in the power department as well. And it's like when we want to talk about October, right? And this goes back to when you're facing high level pitching, yes, are you going to have some of your sluggers be overmatched by like truly elite pitching? The ability to command the ball at the top, throw a banger breaking ball off of it, you're swing and miss guys. I mean, you watch the Phillies enough. I'm sure there's fans of every team across the sport, right? Kyle Schwarber sometimes just looks lost. And it's like, God forbid when he gets you good, right? Like, but sometimes there's stretches where it's like, dude, you're swinging with a hole in your bat, right? It feels like, and there is a large conversation behind too much reliance on power output can be susceptible to higher level pitching, right? We'll be upfront about that. But you mentioned it with the Dodgers beating the Blue Jays. There's still and always will be unbelievable value in the 3-run home run. The bloop, the blast, the bloop, the hit by pitch, Yankee Stadium's rocking, boom. Look at all the historical moments in our sport in the postseason, and it's either strikeouts or home runs, right? And there's a reason why, because those are momentum changers. The easiest way to score is with one swing of the bat, right? If we're going to guarantee the way we're going to score against a Max Scherzer, against a Jacob deGrom, a Chris Sale, a Garrett Cole, a Max Fried, the list goes on and on. Those guys can get God at the wrong time. And we look at Clayton Kershaw's postseason woes across his career. Every time it came from a 3-run home run in the 5th or 6th inning,
Matt
as
Adams.
he got to the end of his, Matt Adams getting him, and that was where it all started. So let's talk a little bit about the October side of things and maybe how this dynamic and small ball ground game doesn't always pay the huge dividends. And you see the Brewers getting swept by the Dodgers in the postseason and just seemingly overmatched when it came time to compete on the same field.
Because I still think, again, I don't like using the Dodgers as an example because, like, again, they've put together this roster that's like, it's just better. Like, so getting swept by the Dodgers, like, I don't know if that's necessarily bad job Brewers, but like, if you look at some of the other scenarios, to me, it's like, and it kind of sticks with the point I've been making this whole time. It's like, you still need the guy that can lose one at any point. And like, 2 would be great. Like, you still need those 2 guys who have the prodigious power to do that, because in the postseason, like, every arm, which I said earlier, like you're facing good pitching every night. Every starting pitcher is going to have good numbers. The relievers are going to be really good, or those teams wouldn't have made the playoffs. They have good pitching. And, the old baseball adage, which is like so true, it's like momentum's only as good as the next day's starting pitcher. And you could be rolling and you could think you have all this momentum in a series. And if you have to go out there the next night and the guy towing the rubber is Tariq Skubal, well, so much for your momentum the day before, because Tariq Skubal is pretty good at taking the bat and sticking it where you know where. That's what he does. So you need to, like, I think that the dynamic lineup, to me, is where you will be successful. And that's why the Blue Jays were able to go to the World Series. Because, again, yes, they put the ball in play and they didn't strike out, but they also had Vlad Jr. And they had guys who could leave the yard. And, like, Springer had a resurgent power year last year. And, like, that matters, right? Springer's home run against Seattle in game 6, 7? Was it game 7? Whatever game it was, where he hit the 3-run homer to flip that game on its head. And then, Seattle was 8 outs away from a World Series. Like, that matters. So you need to have guys who can get on base in front of the guys who can then homer. Like, you can't just be a lineup full of scrappy guys. You can't be a lineup full of guys who just get on base. Like, because if you were to, take a team like that, and that is maybe where the Brewers' shortcomings has been the last couple of years, like, they don't have a 40 homer guy. They thought they had one in Yelich. Injuries have kind of,
and
hurt
baseball.
his power production, and baseballs have hurt his power production. And like, so you get to the Brewers, and like, who was scaring you in the Brewers lineup when you got to the postseason? I have Shohei Ohtani on the mound. I have, Yoshinobu Yamamoto on the mound. Who's scaring me? Or you look at some of these other NL teams with good starting pitchers, like, those guys aren't going to be scared of what the Brewers have rolled out in years past. But let's talk about the Rays this year. Junior Caminero comes up because Chandler Simpson's gotten on base, and Yandy's shot a line drive the other way on a nasty slider with 2 strikes, and he's just like, yeah, I'll take that. And like, now Caminero comes up and it's like, if you hang that slider, it's 3-0. So now you're in trouble. So I still think like you need to have the dynamic offense in postseason, but you better be able to hit the homer. Like you can't just be a team that is scrappy, because you're not going to string the hits together against the arms you're seeing in October in a 5-game, especially in a 3 or 5 game series in the first couple rounds.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that I think shows up to the ball yard every day, right? Is fear in the opposition, and the ability to put pressure on just like the guys who walk up to the plate are just game changers. And again, I think you made a good point there that I really want to emphasize. We're not talking about Joey Gallo inflicting fear in the
No.
opposition. We're talking about Junior Caminero. We're talking about
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Schwarber. We're talking about Aaron Judd. We're talking about Bryce Turang, right? We're talking about 2019 Christian Yelich, right? Like, and the point I make in that is these guys do either something one thing extremely well that it's fear in the opposition, or like Caminero and Turang, even though they do them in different ways, are dynamic enough to hit 100 miles per hour over the opposite infielder's head. So Turang taking a line drive over the shortstop's head for a double, and then can also go, oh, you want to throw this sloppy reliever at me? I'm also going to go bridge to center, right? That's what those guys do. That creates a whole nother, again, it's why Juan Soto is Juan Soto, right? It's because he is able to hit for high average. He competes left on left. He competes against high stuff
Yeah.
guys. If anything, he's better against high stuff guys than he is against low stuff guys. And then you throw some sloppy right-handed arm like Miles Michaelis at him, and it's like guaranteed 3 for 4 with rockets all over the field because he's dynamic, right? Whereas these guys that are more higher variance, right, they are just lucky enough to be elite enough at the power game that they can still get really good pitchers. Those guys in that next level that we're not seeing getting major league jobs anymore, they don't compete against high level pitching anymore. And so that's the conversation that needs to be had, is we need guys who can do both, right?
Both.
Can do
Yeah.
both, and being able to be competitive enough or good enough in the power department against high level pitching to do it in the moment that we need it most. And again, 3-run home runs are not predictable, right? Like we can't predict that somebody's going to go bridge at any moment. But the reality is, whereas you can predict that Chandler Simpson's going to put pressure on his defense and he's going to bunt and he's going to make them sweat and all these different things like that. But again, when you need it and those guys do it, it flips the narrative of the whole series. When you're talking about momentum shifting home runs that tend to completely change the dynamic of your whole roster, right? Your whole momentum in your whole series. And again, it's just one of those things that postseason has told us enough that there's nothing that can match a 3-run home run when the margins are tight. And it's proven that guys like Scherzer and these Scherzer in 2015, I'm thinking back when I was
Right.
watching the Nationals each and every year, but the guys that are true high level aces still tend to get got in big moments. If you can scrounge one across and get a hitter that can be competitive enough in those moments. And there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do. You can practice bunt defense. There ain't no home run defense at the end of the day. There's not. And it flips games and it flips momentum on their head. And it really puts teams in an opportune position to win baseball games at the end of the day.
And what's funny is I think this has kind of been the postseason recipe for a while. Like, I don't think it's changed. Like, as much as winning over 162 is changing, as we mentioned, like, I was just looking up because I was thinking of these teams that have won. Like, I go back 8 years to the 2018 Red Sox. Look at that lineup. It's dynamic. Now you had a superstar in Mookie Betts, which helps because that's one of those guys who can do it all. But you had like peak Andrew Benintendi. Andrew Benintendi wasn't scaring you, but he was on base at 370 that year. Xander Bogaerts was on base at 360 that year. Jackie Bradley Jr. was a glove first guy who could run, steal bases. Oh, and then they had JD Martinez. Like, so then it's like those guys get on in front of JD Martinez. JD Martinez drove in 130 guys that year. It's like they were dynamic. They had guys who could do different things up and down that lineup. And then, like, you're talking about JD Martinez. And again, I think you also need a superstar. Like, and that's kind of part of this, which is like kind of the obvious thing. And everyone's always going to be chasing that. But like, yeah, like, because you could take my argument there, talking about the 2018 Red Sox, and go, yeah, but Mookie Betts, right? Which, like,
Mm-hmm.
sure, there's only a couple Mookie Betts out there, but I just think you have to have that dynamics in the postseason, and it's been the recipe for a long time now. If you go back and look at the World Series over probably the last 10 years, and all those teams were kind of built the same way.
Yeah, I mean, again, you can't look at any World Series and not. I mean, what 2016 Royals? The biggest
No, they were
moments were
15. 16 was like that's
15.
why I think that's why I said 10 years. I'm
16
pretty
was the
confident because
Cubs.
the 15 Royals were interesting,
Yeah.
but 16, right? Look at that Cubs team. How was that Cubs team built in that
Mm-hmm.
offense? They could do a bunch
Yeah.
of different things. You had a
Rizzo,
young Kyle
Bryant.
Schwarber,
Yep.
Rizzo,
Javi.
Bryant, right, and
Yeah.
then keep going on and
And
on.
being able to rely on it. And because I was going to say, like, look back at, you're good to circle 10 years ago, right? Look back at the last 10 World Series and tell me what the biggest moment was for each of those teams, and tell me it wasn't a home run. Howie Kendrick's Grand Slam 2019. Like, we could keep going.
Jorge
And
Soler in 21, Game 6.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Did Mitch Moreland pinch hit home run or something? Like home run 2018, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Like, it's like we could
Seager in 2020.
Yeah, Seager doing Seager things. And
Jordan in 22.
Yep.
20. I don't know who won the World Series. Oh, Adolis Garcia in 23. 2024. I mean, this is really bad podcasting, but I'm impressing myself right now. 2024 was, I mean, who won the World Series in 24? Oh, Dodgers. There was a home run in there somewhere. Oh, Freddie Freeman, Nestor Cortez. Last year, Miguel Rojas, homer off Jeff Hoffman. So let's go. What years do we miss? 2016, Dexter Fowler. Who hit the homer in Game 7? Dexter Fowler.
Oh,
or he let it off with it. But it was almost Rajai Davis off Chapman, but then it was
Rajai Davis off Chapman. Yeah.
But then someone whatever, and then in 2018 we mentioned, or 2017 the Astros. I don't remember that World Series that much. Astros.
Yeah, they were banging on trash cans. I think the biggest moment in that was probably
trash can.
The Yankees Astros going toe to toe. I still remember big home runs. And basically the point is, and somebody can check us, especially if you're listening 52 minutes, go write down, give us back feedback on the biggest moments in your memory. Even if we just looked up highlights, what would be the last of what we watch outside the dog pile? The last time I can think of just like remembering moments that weren't home runs, which technically one of them could be a home run, is that Royals team, is Eric Hosmer's base running. But you could also say Lorenzo Cain's inside the park home run off of Noah Syndergaard was a pretty memorable.
Was it Alcides Escobar?
Escobar, correct, because he was hitting leadoff for them, because their lineup construction was horrible, and they had a no OBP guy as their leadoff because they were just against conventional wisdom, and they relied so much on that bullpen to do what they did. But that's the last time that a true World Series winner's moment, right, the moment of the postseason, wasn't a home run, a momentum shifting home run in a big spot. And even if you want to say there was something else, right? Like Javier Baez going into the basket, into the wind against the Giants early in their postseason run, right? Like just go back to all of your postseason memories when over the last 10 years. And a lot of them are centered around home runs. Home runs. They really are. Like it's crazy to think about, but that's why that wins in the postseason. And again, I say all that to say, like, we need to give ourselves the opportunity to hit home runs. That's a very important caveat. It doesn't need to be reliance on home runs. We just need to give ourselves the opportunity, because that's what wins in October. So we need to not get this conversation construed into we're saying that you have to have 1 through 9 all hitting home runs and all only hitting home runs. No, you have to give yourself the opportunity to hit the 3-run bomb, and being dynamic and being multiple in different ways is the best way, at least in my perspective, to do just that.
Yeah. I mean, and it's going to be the recipe, but again, it's like the game is different over 162, and it'll be interesting to see, because I think we finally this year, like, the rule changes haven't affected the postseason all that much in recent years, in my opinion, like pitch clock or the pickoffs yet. We'll see. Just because the game is different, it's tighter. You still like the risk reward of running in certain situations in the postseason, but the ABS is going to I
Mm-hmm.
would think this could be the first time we see like, and I don't know how the change is going to be, but I think like first time this is going to like, this is the first rule change that's going to affect postseason games largely, I would think, because you, again, especially as you watch and how guys are getting so good at, which is so incredible to me, and like how quickly these guys adapt and like how good so many of them have gotten already at like knowing that ABS zone right away. It's just like, because it's shorter, right, by a couple inches. Is that what we've
Mm-hmm.
learned? It's shorter by a couple
Well,
inches, and
because
so like
every
guys like
baseball player
laying off
lies
those.
about their height for the
Right,
history of time. Every
right,
kid that you know is 6'2" middle infielder, and
right,
turns out they're 5'10".
right. Me and you, yeah, we're 6'3". But like it's incredible. So like it'll be fun to see in the postseason, like a big moment where like guys have gotten punched in the past on balls that are just like or whatever. Forcing guys to come in the zone more because now you have a standardized strike zone could change things. But we just went through it over the last 10 years. This is how you've won in the postseason, and I think that it hasn't changed and it shouldn't change too much. But over the course of 162, it's changed how you get a chance to compete in October.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned it, and I wish, because it was such a good. I literally had to text you about it. But when Doug Glanville said that these guys are now carrying their strike zone with them, again, even if the human element is still a part of your day to day, think about that. Like, think about
Oh,
how
it's
much that
crazy.
has changed swing decisions, right? We want to talk about guys making good swing decisions and whatever you say, like not having to say, well, I think I'm getting 2 inches off the corner, or oh, he's big today. No, like we have concrete evidence of this is my strike zone in every pitcher I face: vert, sink, sweeper, slider, 12-6, forkball, splitter. This is what I'm seeing every day. And the repetitive nature of being able to have a judgment on what the call is has to be massive for hitters. And that's why hitters are more confident and have adapted so quick, is because they sit there and they go, holy crap, I now have concrete obstructive feedback, right? We've all had that teammate, right? Comes back, oh, that's a ball. Okay, be that guy now, right? Like, go be that guy now, and you're gonna come back, and everybody's like, "You're a freaking idiot," right? Like, or we have the iPad right here. Okay, challenge it in spring training, and you go, "Ooh, crap, that is not a ball. That's been a strike my whole life." But like all of those teammates that are hitters, like this ump sucks. Well, go up there and challenge the umpire's call and showcase why you think your strike zone is better. And like again, I mean, we don't need an ABS conversation. Two things: how good umpires are, and how no catcher in the history of baseball has walked right out of catching and gone into umpiring, blows my mind, because those guys are unbelievable.
Ridiculous. Those guys are ridiculous. Like there's a few, and it's like almost funny. It's so egregious when you see the ones that are bad because so like the majority of them are so good at it. And there's a couple, um, there's a couple that are bad at it, and it's almost like
Mm-hmm.
you almost laugh at them because you're like, what are you looking at back there? And it's funny because I think a lot of times it's the emotional challenge for a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, we needed that pitch, or I wanted that pitch, or that was a big pitch, and so then they'll challenge, and it's just like that's not close. Um, and I wonder if they instantly regret it, or if they're just that bad. Because I don't know how like those guys, the majority of catchers, it's incredible how good they
Well,
are
you
at.
you have to be happy because pitchers look like the stupidest
Yeah,
on the planet.
well,
And
because
it's
that's
like
all
we've
emotion. You
always
want that
known that. Yeah,
pitch. Yeah, it's
we've
like
always
you
known
just
that
want that
pitchers
pitch.
were too
You felt like you
emotional. Oh,
made a
I
good
wasn't
pitch.
getting the
Yeah.
corner.
And like I wanted that pitch. It's like you made a good
Yeah.
pitch, so you want it, and you used to get that call, right? You made the good pitch, and you used to get it. That used to be like a big part of it, the human element. Like a lot of it was like these umps aren't stupid. It was just like the emotion. Like that's a good pitch. He made his pitch.
Mhm.
I'm gonna give it to him, and pitchers want that still. And it's like no, and it's so funny because I mean I haven't seen since like the first couple of weeks of the season. You don't even see the pitchers challenging anymore.
No.
They just rely on the catchers
Mm-mm.
as they should because catchers are so good at it, and it's it's fun to see because they're
I, I,
it's
I've
crazy.
seen a couple of body language from the pitcher of like,
Yeah, why aren't you challenging that towards your catcher?
it's like, and it's funny because the catcher's always right. Like it's like
Always.
like
It's
you're like,
rare. Again,
hey,
there's
go
like a
check that
few
out on the
bad
iPad.
ones.
Yeah.
There's a few
Yeah.
bad ones, and it's like you can tell that they're the bad ones because everyone else is so good at it back there. It's
Yes.
crazy.
Well, and I've even noticed that it feels like they are calculated on what they do, right? Like I've seen a lot of, my favorite is like, this guy's struggling and like we're about to go 3-0 on this hitter and it's borderline and we need this one. And like even though they know, they're like, hey, we like just on like the whim of like this pitcher needs it.
We
It's a
need it.
late
Yeah.
inning game. Like he's pitching, he's throwing a little butthole type, fastball here, and he needs this breaking ball in the corner. Like we need this up top. And I've seen a couple of those. Like those have been the most egregious from catchers, is in moments where like you can feel the heart rate of the pitcher through the TV. And so they feel that anxiety of the moment. And like those are the worst ones from catchers when they're like calm and dialed in. Boom. And like it gets me too. And like we don't give enough credit to umpires either. Like these guys are the best they've ever been.
When they're getting and like they're getting calls overturned and it's like 0.2. It's like, oh, if you're within 0.2 inches, you're good at your job. Because you're seeing 100%. That net ball is coming at 97 miles an hour and it was 0.2 off and you called it a strike. Like, yeah, I got you. Here's the one that just bothered me. This is the last thing here. The one that is my baseball brain will never like this, because in my brain, it'll never be a good pitch, because what pitch do you never want to throw as a pitcher, right? It's a hanging
high
changeup
or
and the fact that guys are getting rewarded for the one that like barely grazes the top of the zone on something that slipped now, and like the catchers are getting good enough to be like, oh no, that caught the top, and it's like a guy's getting punched down on pitches. Like, no, you don't deserve that one. That's a bad pitch. You don't deserve the slider that just like cement mixed on you and was up, and it was kind of out of the zone, but the very bottom of the baseball clipped the top edge. Like, you don't deserve that.
I'm the only person who would pull out a Google sheet and start doing math as we're trying to wrap up a podcast, because I'm trying to fit these stats into it real quick, of the stolen base adjusted stats and being able to get us some better slugging percentages. So I was trying to cram it in. So I was trying to stall and get us as far along as we could, but I've only gotten through stolen base adjusted OBP, which is never going to be a positive, especially for teams that run more. So it's always going to hurt them more because of more caught stealing. So we're sitting there currently at having to do stolen base adjusted slugging percentage. I'll have it for Dan the second we get off of here. But for our listeners that are really sitting on the edge of the seats, trying to hope that I can get through my Google sheet as quickly as possible, and how well I know my functions, not good enough apparently to multitask this. But Dan, really awesome conversation. Had a lot of fun. And I think it's a new horizon of baseball, which I think is really entertaining, and people need to really like, and again, this is my soapbox for a second here. People really need to stand up and appreciate the level of baseball that we're watching. Baseball is such a old school conservative environment where people don't like change, and we really like our grandfather's baseball for some odd reason, while every other sport accelerates growth, and this is the most enjoyable it's been, right? We've got the three true outcomes,
Good.
guys, out of the sport, and we've replaced them with guys that can boogie and can bunt, and the ground ball base hit is back, and the stolen base is back in a large way, and pitchers are unbelievable, and their stuff is so good, and these guys are really competing, and we don't give enough credit for how talented they all are, which is understandable because a lot of people are default negative about the sport as is. But it really is entertaining to watch, and not to mention 6:40 games wrap up at 9:00, and you can just you can have a good night's sleep and watch baseball. Like it's
great.
It is beautiful, and the sport really is beautiful. So if you're listening to us, you definitely see the game the way we see the game, and being able to appreciate the finer parts of the sport, and being able to see it through the lens that we see it. So. I think it's really fun to see what the Rays and Brewers are doing, but it's just as fun to see the Yankees, and it's just as fun to see, like the whole thing I was thinking about the whole time was, who the Rays could really use? Brandon Lau. And he's been great for the Pirates, and they could really use a dynamic hitter in their lineup like that. So that's going to be my opinion there, I guess. But Dan, appreciate you taking the time. Happy Memorial Day to all those who are listening, and that'll do for this episode of the Baseball Development Hub podcast.